Welcome to today's Explainer, guys. But instead of our usual format, we're actually stepping into the shadows for a deeply chilling analysis today. We are breaking down one of the most terrifying, literally blood-curdling narratives you are ever going to hear. We're looking at this crazy story where history, the supernatural, and just absolute dread totally collide in the dark corridors of a British-era heritage hotel in Kolkata. So let's just dive right into this whole shebang. And trust me, you might actually want to leave the lights on for this one.
So what happens when you open a door that was absolutely meant to stay shut? It's a classic horror movie question, right? But for this 26-year-old woman named Rupa, this wasn't just some philosophical query. It became a horrific reality. You see, Rupa had just started working as housekeeping staff at the Royal Crescent. Now picture this, an imposing building from the British era. Think long, dark corridors, creaking wooden stairs, and walls lined with those massive, kind of intimidating antique paintings. Just a few days into her new gig, she's working the night shift. As she walks past a honeymoon suite on the second floor, she just stops dead in her tracks. From inside, she hears this heavy, unmistakable dragging sound. And here's the kicker. According to the hotel records, that suite was supposed to be completely empty.
So Rupa slowly approaches this heavy wooden door. She knocks. Complete silence. She calls out, "Hello, sir? Anybody there? Room service?" Still, absolutely no answer. The dragging sound had stopped, and it was replaced by this suffocating, heavy quiet. Driven by protocol, I guess, and maybe a fatal dose of curiosity, Rupa pulls out her master keycard. She swipes it, the little light turns green, the lock clicks, and she pushes the door open, stepping right into the pitch-black room.
Section 1. The Honeymoon Suite Horror, a gruesome discovery.
What Rupa found inside that room was an inciting incident that basically shattered her ordinary world into a waking nightmare. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she saw a body suspended in midair right in the center of the bedroom. The victim's hands and feet were bound to the four posts of the bed, but the most horrifying detail? The head was completely gone, like severed entirely from the neck, with blood actively dripping onto the floor beneath it. And the lifeless body was just swinging back and forth, really slowly, kind of like an incomplete pendulum. As you can imagine, Rupa lets out a blood-curdling scream, sprints out into the corridor, and alerts the entire hotel staff. The police were called in immediately, and even these hardened, seasoned investigators were shaken to their core by the sheer brutality of the scene.
Section 2. Footsteps in the dark. The haunting begins.
Now, you'd probably think that with the cops involved, the terror would pause, right? But the nightmare didn't just stay locked in that honeymoon suite. It actually followed Rupa. The trauma of the whole event obviously left her deeply disturbed, but what happened next proved this wasn't just psychological shock. A few nights later, she's trying to get some sleep in her staff quarters. Suddenly, at exactly 3 a.m., which, is often referred to in folklore as the witching hour, her eyes just dart open. She is wide awake, completely paralyzed by this familiar, creeping dread.
First, she hears it again, that heavy, scraping, dragging sound echoing out in the dark corridor outside her room. It was the exact same noise she heard right before opening that honeymoon suite. The dragging slowly stops right outside her door. Then come 3 loud, distinct knocks. Thock, thock, thock. Rupa's throat goes totally dry. Mustering every single ounce of courage she has left, she looks down at the gap under her door, and what she sees literally stops her heart. There were feet standing right outside, but they were inverted, like facing backward. Rupa tries to scream, but her voice completely fails her. After a few agonizing moments, those backward feet slowly drag away into the darkness. She actually reported this the very next morning. But of course, management dismissed it as trauma-induced hallucinations. But guys, it was definitely not a hallucination.
Section 3. Unearthing the 1931 Cult. Secrets of the Basement.
So, the haunting is escalating, and the hotel itself was about to reveal exactly why. 2 days later, Rupa gets assigned to clean out this old storage room. Tucked away in the dust, she finds an ancient wooden box. The lid of this thing was carved with these bizarre, super unsettling symbols. There was a circle, an eye inside it, and it was surrounded by handprints. Rupa opens it up to find a stack of extremely old black and white photographs. One photo in particular made the hair on her arms literally stand straight up. It showed a group of people dressed in black robes wearing these strange masks. Suspended in the air among them was a woman, her hands and feet bound with ropes. And, just like the body in the honeymoon suite, she was completely headless.
But the most absolutely crucial detail was actually on the back of the photograph. Written in faded ink was a single chilling word: Arpan. It literally translates to sacrifice. Terrified out of her mind, Rupa handed the box and the photographs straight over to the police. This single word basically validated everything she had been experiencing. This wasn't just some random murder. It was a ritual.
Armed with these crazy photos, the police dug into the hotel's old blueprints and discovered a sealed basement dating back to the British era that hadn't been opened since 1941. They break the seal, and inside, they find a literal house of horrors. The walls were covered in those exact same eye and handprint symbols. Right in the center sat a stone altar, surrounded by scattered bones, which, by the way, forensic experts later confirmed were 70 to 80 years old. They also found a diary that detailed the whole horrific truth. Back in 1931, this elite secret society formed to sacrifice women in a ritual they called Arpan, which involved suspending them and, horribly, decapitating them.
Now, this diary contained horrifying details of all these rituals, but the final entry on the very last page was a prophecy that essentially sealed poor Rupa's fate. It read, "Until the final Arpan is complete, they will return." Upon learning this, Rupa was completely consumed by fear. She realized the ritual hadn't ended back in the 1930s. It was happening right now. She decided she was going to quit her job the very next morning. But unfortunately, tomorrow never came for her.
Section 4. The Final Sacrifice. No Escape.
Rupa tried to outrun a curse that had been festering in the foundations of the Royal Crescent for over 80 years. That night, as she finished her shift and walked back to her quarters, she felt this overwhelming presence right behind her. She turns around, nothing's there, but when she pushes open the door to her own bedroom, they were waiting for her. 5 figures. They were dressed in the exact same black robes and terrifying masks from those 1930s photographs. And in a detail of just pure nightmare fuel, each of those 5 figures was holding a rotting, severed head of a woman.
Rupa screams and bolts from her room, running completely blindly through the labyrinth of the hotel corridors. She felt entirely alone, almost as if the hotel had swallowed her into some other dimension. The masked figures were closing in from all sides. In a desperate panic, she throws herself into an empty room, slams the door, and locks it. Panting, shaking, she pulls out her phone and frantically dials the police. They promise they're on their way. But as Rupa lowers her phone and looks around the room she had just barricaded herself inside, her blood runs cold. She hadn't picked a random room. She was standing inside the honeymoon suite.
The police arrived at the hotel as fast as humanly possible. They found the honeymoon suite locked from the inside. When they finally broke the door down, this horrific wave of déjà vu washed over them. Suspended in the middle of the room, hands and feet tied to the bedposts, swinging like an incomplete pendulum, was a headless body. It was Rupa. And written on the wall of the suite in fresh blood were the words, "Untim Arpan, the final sacrifice." The hotel was sealed shut shortly after that. The locals say it eventually reopened under a new name, forever haunted by the headless spirit just pacing its halls.
Section 5. Rituals, Murders, and Mysteries. The darkness continues.
The horrifying tale of the Royal Crescent leaves us with this heavy, lingering dread, doesn't it? I mean, it taps into our deepest fears of secret societies and gruesome rituals. But what if we transition from the supernatural to the strictly psychological? If you are captivated by dark psychological thrillers where serial murders intertwine with themes of guilt, trauma, and cult-like rituals, then you really need to look at how art imitates these horrific legends. Take Z5 series Brown starring Charisma Kapoor. In this show, we see a chillingly similar modus operandi, a serial killer targeting victims in highly ritualistic, terrifying ways, leaving behind decapitated victims. It perfectly mirrors the relentless dark energy we just explored, but it grounds it in actual human psychology rather than supernatural curses.
Ultimately, whether we are analyzing an 80-year-old haunted hotel legend or breaking down a brilliant psychological thriller like Brown, streaming on Z5, we're really driven by the exact same dark curiosity. We don't just want to unmask the killer, right? We want to understand the twisted, broken logic that makes them do it in the first place. What drives a person, or a cult, to demand an Arpan? That is the thought I want to leave you with today. Thank you so much for joining this explainer. Stay curious, stay observant, and honestly, maybe double-check your locks tonight.